Hello there. Welcome back to the membership side. Today I have another video for you, just a free talk analysis, and it's inspired by a comment, or it's an answer to a comment that I got on the latest video about Grace from Love Island. This person says, can you analyze why Jess failed to be as alluring or likable as Grace or Uma despite forcing that narrative? Would be such an interesting video. So I am going to explain a little bit what happened. You don't have to have watched Love Island to enjoy this video. I will get into it. She does mention both Grace and Uma, but I will not be getting into anything about Uma. I just feel like I've already made the video about Grace, and I don't really necessarily consider them 100% in the same boat, even though I sort of get what the commenter meant. However, there was also another person on the season, and her name was Jess. And if you haven't watched Love Island, basically Grace had the mindset that she did, assuming you've already watched that video. I'm not really going to get into that. And the mindset that she has just makes her ooze what it is that she oozes, and it also guides her in every interaction that she takes on the show. And that's what we see play out, and that's what we become so mesmerized with. When we see this really strong and healthy mindset that isn't really riddled with too many insecurities or limiting beliefs, we pick up on it. On top of that, of course, she is beautiful. So there's a lot there to get inspired by. So right now in the just relationships sphere, there's a lot of focusing on the fact that you as the woman is the prize. I also have a video which is named something about you are the prize, so I'm no stranger to that mindset or belief. But on this season was also a girl named Jess. And Jess and Grace are different in multiple aspects. And I think not to get this video too muddy, I'm not gonna get into absolutely everything of it. But for example, one of the ways, which is not gonna be the meat of this video, but one of the ways in which they're different is that I really felt like both Grace and Jess were brutally honest with how they were feeling and their opinions. But Grace's opinions as a whole were just maybe a little bit more, or just she just carried different opinions that Jess did, where Jess's opinions were just often a little bit volatile. And so her honesty, which honesty is really a perfect, a really great virtue to have, but her honesty was often kind of uncomfortable in the way it was also just delivered to people, and also maybe just unnecessary, because while honesty is appreciated, your opinion is sort of worthless a lot of the time. So a lot of the time it's keep it to yourself, or wait until you're asked. Jess wasn't really that great at doing that, but that's probably one of the things that comes down to the likable points. But I think what this person really meant with the comment is the fact that Jess, while dating the guys, kept saying that she was the prize. I also recall her reminding other women a couple of times saying that they were the prize. And in Jess's main romantic relationship, at least the first one, which was with Ronnie, they were sort of part of they became part of a triangle, which was exactly what Grace sort of, avoided with Joey and Jesse. Once Joey tried to put Grace into a position where she would be part of a triangle, or she would be a second option, Grace just took herself out of that equation, and that was it. We can tell authentically that she was just done. And once Jess was put in this same position where Ronnie tried to bring Jess into a triangle when he was also getting to know Harriet, Jess, I remember her talking with some of the other girls about what she was gonna do, and then eventually, which is already a thing, it's not as self-validating, which is perfectly fine, by the way, but it's not as self-validating as Grace, who just makes a decision. She doesn't need any input to decide that she doesn't want to be an option, where Jess just needs still a little bit of support in that decision, or at least she needs to vent it out. And then she did take the decision to leave Ronnie. It was sort of I don't remember what the ultimatum was, but it was her who removed herself from the situation with Ronnie and Harriet, which is really great. However, Jess, unlike Grace, was sort of not able to just be okay with her decision. She kept going. I don't want to say she went back on her word. I mean, maybe a little bit, because she did go back to Ronnie and tested the waters a couple of times. She also insinuated to him multiple times that she was the one that he really wanted, and not Harriet, that he had now, started to get to know. And this is where the difference lies, because it says here, can you analyze why Jess failed to be as alluring and likable as Grace despite trying to force that narrative? And I think the person sort of partly hit the nail on the head within the comment themselves, which is that Jess, she's not forcing the narrative, but she is highly outspoken about the fact that it is a narrative that she is trying to have play out. While Grace made the same decisions, you know, she didn't need the validation. She made the decision for herself, and once it was over, it was over. Where Jess sort of followed the same framework as Grace did, but it wasn't over when it was over. You know, she was still emotionally attached to the whole ordeal, which is what, you know, kept her coming back a little bit to Ronnie and trying to soothe herself, saying that she was the prize. And you could tell she was sort of, I don't want to make assumptions on what Jess was going through internally, but she kind of insinuated multiple times that Ronnie wouldn't be into Harriet and eventually he'd be back with her, which honestly I totally get that. I think I went into that a little bit in the Grace video as well. I mean, not that Grace did this, but that it's very difficult to remove yourself from the situation when you like someone. In the situation with Ronnie and Jess, did she really like Ronnie? I'm not sure. Ronnie is a very feminine man in some aspects. I mean, he's still a man and masculine in many ways, but in his dealing with Harriet and Jess, he sort of became like the prize that they were fighting over. And the only way you can pull yourself out of like a situation like that is by not participating. And Jess was just not quite there yet. And this sort of brings me to exactly what is like going on, because when we sit at home as a viewer, we watch this play out, and it's so easy to sort of like look down on or demonize someone like Jess, who didn't necessarily succeed 100% in like the narrative she was trying to force, for a lack of a better term. But here is what it is. You know, if you've landed yourself on this channel, I mean, obviously feminine energy is what we talk about here. Essentially, we sort of live in a world, and I don't want to say necessarily it's because it's the modern world, because I don't think femininity has been valued and celebrated for a long time in many different societies. And it has landed us with a generation of women, or like multiple generations of women, who are underappreciated, undervalued, punished for all their gifts, and sort of like discarded. And now we're in a situation, at least my generation, I certainly, I don't want to put too many limiting beliefs out there for that, but I feel like a lot of us has to come into like relearning our worth. And I'm assuming it's going to be true for almost everyone who's watching this, because that's probably partly why you are here. And Grace, you know, again, we can't assume exactly why Grace is the way that she is, but someone also commented on the Grace video that it seems like she has a relaxed nervous system, which this is a topic we're going to get loads more into down the road, but she definitely does. You can just sense it, you can feel it. It's what we feel as like the energy that hits us as viewers. But that is rare, especially Grace is 25, and her mindset is just so admirable, but it probably also is programmed into her from an early age. That doesn't mean that, you know, she doesn't have struggles, or that she's not also responsible for like upholding the mindset herself, but a lot of us were not born into sort of like that frame. And my guess is that Jess wasn't. But Jess has sort of awakened to the fact that she is worthy. That's my guess. It seems like she's someone who's been hardened a lot by life experiences, and she's probably been discarded and disrespected like men, like many of us have, especially in the sort of like the Western world. I mean, I say especially in the Western world. The difference here is just that in the Western world we get to decide exactly who we do with and with what. And you know, it has like, no one tells us the differences between men and women, so we give all that affection to men who just don't respect us at all. Like, we end up participating in this like casual way of dating and letting men access us that just don't respect women at all, which, you know, is just like the framework of society right now, which is awful. But Jess strikes me as someone who's really woken up to her worth for the first time, and she is essentially in the early stage of reprogramming herself, which Grace is fully programmed for what we're talking about, where Jess has awoken, but she is not done. Like, her knowing of her worth is at its infant stage. And I think trying to sort of like criticize what she's doing is completely pointless. We're all born into this chaos of limiting societal beliefs that we have to uncover for ourselves, because they're harming us as we're living through them. So I actually, for one, really, really admire Jess. To me, it seems like she carries some things that are probably really painful, but she's clearly like a really good person at heart. She definitely had some not so nice moments on the show, and people came down on her for that really hard. But honestly, I feel like it's so crazy what we come down on people for. It's really clear to me that even if she didn't get along with Harriet and maybe some of the others, and again, she had a few not so nice moments on the show, she really did her best, like she was there for her friends. She's still probably figuring out to what degree honesty is appreciated, but she's sort of like awoken to her worth, and it makes me feel kind of sad for her that now she's in the world of reality TV stars, and so many people are gonna like project their own like limiting beliefs and hate onto her. And I hope that it's gonna make her stronger on her journey. I hope it's gonna make her come down harder on reprogramming herself, like, and she definitely is the prize, for some guy out there, she will be. But the thing is that when you are the prize, let's put it like that, as Grace were in many situations, and also as Gia is, and as Jess is as well. The thing is that Grace and Gia is living out those truths, because even in the scenarios where there are guys who don't like them, we saw Grace go through that, and the same is true for Gia. Even though Gia was really popular at first, there were still men on her season of Love Island who weren't into her, but instead were into the other women. And imagine like how different the show would have been if Gia decided she liked one of the men that didn't like her. And that's sort of like the difference. Like when you are the prize, you live that narrative, and that means in situations where you're not, it's so much easier or more effortless and feels more authentic to walk away, because your authentic inner experience is being the prize anyway. So if you're not treated like that, it might hurt, but you are going to walk out of that, and then some other story is going to pass you by, and you're going to latch onto that. Where it seems like Jess is still at the point where, again, she's awoken to her worth. She's realized what her, like, she's onto something. She's not really at the place yet where she lives that as her truth. So that's why, we see her end things with Ronnie, because she knows that that is what she's supposed to do, but her identity is not quite 100% there yet. Like her self-concept, like the way she sees herself, she's still in the persisting phase, which is what makes it seem like, she goes back to him and stuff like that, because she's still partly tethered to the narrative where she's not chosen, where you're either chosen or not. It's honestly not really depending on your romantic relationship. You sort of live that way inside, like in the knowing of who you are in a relationship to someone, and then you reject life situations that doesn't present you with what you are looking for, or like that doesn't resonate one-to-one with what you're experiencing on the inside. So if you're experiencing on the inside being the prize, you're gonna reject situations and narratives which does not put you in that position, and you're gonna do that quite quickly and with not a lot of hesitation, because it's simply who you are. Where when you're not like that, you're gonna maybe don't want to put any like names on this, but you are gonna like chase a guy when you are not in the knowing that like you're the prize. Where you have someone like Jess who has awoken to the fact, so she does what she knows she needs to do, which is, for example, like dropping Ronnie. But she's not there yet where she doesn't understand that like just like dumping Ronnie is not what's gonna make her the prize and make him come back. Like she's doing the right thing, but you can almost tell like it's churning that is not what makes him want her. And it's simply because like she's still attached to a narrative which includes Ronnie, where once she really gets to the point where she knows and feels and believes, and her self-concept supports the fact that she is the prize, her interest in someone like Ronnie, which doesn't treat her that way, will just completely dwindle on its own. So that's essentially what it's about. We're watching women awaken to their worth, and it can look a little bit, think of like a baby deer learning to walk or something like that. It can look a little bit awkward when we see that people are still in the learning phase. It's certainly something that I can recognize from my own journey as well. It's not like you learn something and then you just know. I mean, 99% of the time it's not. It is sort of like you need to take a different path, and you need to take that path 30, 40, 50 times selectively and consciously before it internalizes. And on top of that, believing that you are the prize is usually not that simple. When we don't believe we are the prize, it's usually not just that one belief. It's sort of like a way to categorize all of these beliefs together. But if you don't view yourself that way, it's an accumulation of many different beliefs that sort of like support each other. So believing that you are the prize, I feel like it can be the anchor or like the affirmation intuition or the thought that brings you in the right direction. And it's going to take you on a journey, which is probably part of the journey that you are on right now, since you're on the membership side of my channel. And it's going to take you further in the right sorry, it's going to take you further in the right direction as you build on like a nice mindset. But once you're being conscious of like your bad programs, especially those that are like so society wide that sort of like dropping them makes you go like against the grain, you're really sort of like on your own in developing these really good mindsets. And at the same time, like you're going to trigger a whole bunch of people who will like criticize you for your journey as you honestly are just trying to do your best. And that's what we see with Jess. I like Jess. I thought she was a great person with some not so great moments. So yeah, hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you next time.